Thank you, Ed. Those who know Ed knows that he is a Renaissance man and is also one of the best storytellers, a best guitarist, and an amazingly sharp strategist. So thank you, Ed, for that. So we are going to have talk about how new economy happens at different scales. And for this Buffalo panel, Sam Magavern, who is with the Partnership for the Public Good and with Open Buffalo's Innovation Lab, will be leading us through this next panel. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. On behalf of the Crossroads Collective, I want to welcome you to this panel and introduce you to our panelists. We have Rebekah Williams. She's the Youth Education Director for Massachusetts Avenue Project. Khadijah Hussein is a mobile market specialist with the Massachusetts Avenue Project and a future biomedical engineer, if I understand right. Andrew Delmonte is founder of Cooperation Buffalo. Rebecca Newberry is the Executive Director of the Clean Air Coalition of Western New York. Clarke Gocker is the Policy Director at Push Buffalo, and India Walton is a member of the Community First Alliance and one of the inaugural graduates of the Open Buffalo Emerging Leaders Program. So I'm just going to make a few remarks and then turn it over to them. So here in Buffalo, the wounds of the extractive economy are open and bleeding. You can see them in the statistics about our region. You can see them in the fact that half of the children in the city of Buffalo are living in poverty, that the unemployment rate for African Americans in this region is 3 times that of whites. You can see it in the fact that we have the 6th worst racial segregation in the whole nation, that 80% of African Americans live in high poverty neighborhoods compared to 10% of whites in our region. But beyond the statistics, you can see the wounds of the extractive economy in our boarded up houses and our vacant lots, in the neighborhoods that we abandoned in order to build new subdivisions on our former farmlands. You can see those wounds in the brownfields that private industry left behind for public to clean up. You can see them in the heating bills that are breaking the backs of tenants living in poorly insulated, poorly repaired apartments. You can see them in our courts, in our jails, where African Americans, despite being only 14% of our county's population, represent 42% of our arrests and 60% of our prison sentences. You can see them in children being diagnosed with lead poisoning at a higher rate here than in Flint, Michigan. But in Buffalo, as I hope you've seen this weekend, we also have a proud history of resistance and resilience. And this is a place where you can also see the green shoots of the new economy thrusting up through the rubble of the old. You can see those green shoots quite literally in our community gardens and our urban farms, but you can also see them in policy victories being won around energy democracy and just transitions. You can see those green shoots in an unprecedented collaboration across racial and geographic lines to build a movement for things like community benefits and community control of public land. And most important of all, you can see those green shoots in the young leaders that are emerging to build that new economy with all the power of their minds and the passion in their hearts. So now I want to introduce you to 6 of those amazing new leaders, and they'll give you some snapshots of the new economy in Buffalo, and we'll start with Rebekah Williams.
Thank you. I have 2 minutes to talk about food justice in our city, and so I will do that through the framework of my experience. And then I'm going to pass it on to the lovely young woman next to me whose story is very beautiful, and I'm excited to hear it again myself. So although I would love to speak with you about the Black Panthers and how they had breakfast in the classroom in the Head Start programs throughout Buffalo, that was before my time, so I can't tell that story. So 1998, there was the Wegmans 5 arrest. a union worker from California traveled to Buffalo to ask us to stand in solidarity with the workers there who Driscoll Strawberries was spraying pesticides right on the fields, and the workers had no rights to organize. So standing in solidarity with them, there was a protest out in the suburbs here where 5 of us were arrested. The actual reason of that arrest, though, was had to do actually with police brutality. A young woman from the west side of Buffalo, a young Lebanese woman who I dragged along with me to the protest, was brutalized by a cop who came all pumped up and ready to deal something out. So that kicked off her being brutalized, and that actually was the point of solidarity that myself and the 3 suits that were arrested, that's why we were arrested. So a couple years later, I would jump forward to parents organizing in a public Montessori school on the east side around growing gardens and trying to connect some of the benefits of children being able to get their hands in the dirt and then actually being able to bring that food that they grew into the cafeterias and learn how to prepare it themselves, and learning all the challenges surrounding that. Additionally, at that time, I lived on the east side with my newborn son, who's in the audience over there, and began to be involved with land reclamation on the east side, and learned the challenges of organizing block clubs and talking with black folks, talking with other black folks about organizing around community gardens and market gardens, and some of the issues surrounding land reclamation here in Buffalo. That led me to meet an organization that's become my home and my family, which is Massachusetts Avenue Project. And they are my people, one, because they come from the same outlook that I do, which is that you go to the community first and you ask the community what it wants. Before I introduce a young woman from the community that of young people who we employ at Massachusetts Avenue Project, I'll just say a little tidbit more of jumping ahead into 2016. A colleague of ours at the University at Buffalo, Dr. Raja, published a piece called Rust Belt Radicals. And really what it talks about is how those of us in our communities, in our neighborhoods, we were doing the work before the policies were in place. And we kind of blaze that trail in terms of trying to draw along the policies. Now, here we are today, and our green code, includes planning around urban agriculture and allows for chickens in our city. But there's so much more work to do. And I just also want to tie in quickly, also flashing ahead just to a new organizing that is going on where people of color in our communities are really, young people are coming together around some of these injustices, and just recognizing that connection between food justice and race issues. And those, if you come to the food justice tracks, you'll hear a lot more about that. So hopefully we'll touch on that again tomorrow. But just in that, the work that we're doing in our cities right now with food justice and at MAP has to look first at people of color and have them share kind of what is necessary and what is working and the direction to go. And so with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Khadijah, who is one of our young leaders.
Hi, everybody. My name is Khadijah. I was born in a small village that's called Dadaab, Kenya. I was born in the city, which is Nairobi, Kenya, but raised in Dadaab, Kenya, which is a smaller village where it's not so as well as the city. So it was a poor village too. In a village back home, we were taught to everybody is brothers and sisters. I don't know if you guys ever work with youth around the world, and most youth from Africa will call each other cousin, and they're always another African that they see, they're that's my cousin. Not because literally that's our cousin, but because we're our parents taught us that all of us are all brothers and sisters. So in Kenya, I didn't have much. Growing up as a little girl, I I didn't have a phone to play with. I didn't have a laptop or what we have here. Like, we have a lot of different things here that can keep us, having fun and everything. At Kenya, all we had is family and our friends. That was our entertainment. So, like, in the village, it was a safe village too. No, everybody was trusted, and we all knew each other since we were family. We would after dinner around 7 o'clock, and we would eat dinner all together at the village too. We cook at the village, we do everything at the village because we are all family. So after 7 o'clock p.m., we will go, it gets a little dark, and we will go out and playing with our friends, till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the night. And we didn't have school there. We didn't have the opportunity to take school because everything was expensive there, and it was tough because we lived in a poor village. And couple years after my oldest brother was born, maybe around 1996, my parents decided that they should register for being one of the people that goes to America. And my mom, when we did get selected back in 2003, we was told that we was gonna go to America in 2005 of March. When we was going, getting ready to go to the airport and everything, when we did arrive in America, we was landed in Tampa, Florida. And my mom always told us that we came here for a better life, so take every opportunity every positive opportunity you can. And from there, I always took her words I took it serious because I know how much it would mean to my mom that we do accomplish what she wanted for us. And she said, I brought you here for a reason, so don't make a fool out of me, and show people that you why the reason you came here. So as we moved to Buffalo 9 months later after we lived in Tampa, Florida. And Tampa was the weather was kind of similar to back in Kenya. It was both hot. So I didn't have a problem. So when I came to Buffalo, it was winter and it was snowing, and I was wondering when we was on the airplane, I'm like, Mom, what's that white stuff? And she didn't really knew either. She's like, I don't know, this is America, maybe it's and my mom, and when I got off the airplane, I was very tiny too and short. I fell, and my siblings started laughing at me, until my younger brother that laughed first fell too, and then I started laughing. It was freezing. The weather, I couldn't take it. So I lived here and everything. I started learning the American culture and everything. And growing up, when I got to high school, I tried different things. I started working on MAP, Massachusetts Avenue Project with Rebekah. And it taught me a lot about youth leadership. And right now, I'm a mobile market specialist, so I bring healthy produce to food desert areas. And through MAP, I got involved with YAC, which is Youth Advisory Council. Now its name is HYPE. And that helps teaches youth to bring healthier food to schools, Buffalo Public Schools. And then also through MAP, I got involved with community health workers, teaches youth to be involved into their community. So, I never thought 10 years from 2005 I never thought I would be this type of leader, and I graduated last month as an early graduate junior, and so. So why am I saying this? It's because I feel like our youth should be taught and to be more involved into everything. Like my mom always told us, be involved into the most, the positive opportunities you get, always take it. So as tonight, I would say our youth should be taught more about agriculture and all the leadership roles, because I noticed in America, most of our farmers are older senior citizens. If they pass on, if our youth are not taught right now, who would take their place,
So, I'm going to talk to you about Cooperation Buffalo, but to do that, I'm going to start in the spirit of remembering that I'm a human being, not just a human doing. To talk a little bit about me. So, I was born and raised 4 blocks away from where we're all sitting today in Buffalo here. Spent most of my life here. I come from a father who's an Italian, descended from Italian immigrants who came here 109 years ago. to Buffalo and lived and worked and started their own businesses and operated their own businesses in a district downtown that is now called Canal Side, and there's lots of big oversized Adirondack chairs and sailing that happens there. But back then it was known as the Infected District, and it was a really rough place to be, and folks lived in extreme poverty down there, and it was sort of really looked down on by the Buffalo aristocracy, if that gives you a sense of, the value that our system often places on the labor that is needed to make a city great like this. And then my mother is a hardworking college grad who entered into a profession that is overrun and controlled by very aggressive, manipulative, awful white men, and has struggled through that her whole life and brings those struggles home every day. And was eventually fired when it became more economically advantageous to hire 2 people for the price of her, and has since had to go through some real interesting personal changes too because of that. And that has never felt right, and there's something that really doesn't feel right personally, and I'm sure that's why all of us are here, about a system that puts capital above people. So it's important for me to remember that that's why I'm here. And then why we do the work of cooperative development here in Buffalo. Buffalo's been through some moments when this has been more or less sort of at the fore. There's some new worker cooperatives in the room tonight that have started recently in Buffalo. There was a surge in the 80s and 90s here that you might have heard a little bit about earlier in session. And then and the cooperative history that is documented well in Buffalo goes all the way back to the late 1920s when a group that had varying names, but at one point it was called the Buffalo Cooperative Economic Society, headed by a man by the name of Dr. Ezekiel Nelson. And it was particularly used as a way to lift people of color out of poverty and as a racial solidarity and mutual self-help model. And that's part of the lens that we wanted to bring to sort of restarting cooperative development structurally here in Buffalo through Cooperation Buffalo. So,
Andrew, can you make sure you keep your mic?
Yes, sorry. So we try to frame this as using organizing tools, the toolkit of the organizer, to do business development. So our mission is to mobilize workers to achieve economic security through cooperative business ownership. The strategies we employ, popular education, common organizing tactic just to get out there and teach people and learn with people in community about what it means to be able to own things. And for many of the people that we encounter, that's something that isn't necessarily even understood or common. Standard business training, skill sharing amongst other entrepreneurs and cooperatives, incubation of businesses that are particularly going to generate wealth and power in communities that are most affected by inequality. We're forming a peer-to-peer network that's going to provide mutual support for and from and by the businesses that are coming through our incubation process, hopefully making some of us developers who started this work obsolete at a certain point. And then what we've really been doing for 2 or 3 years at this project, myself and 2 other founders of Cooperation Buffalo, has been the ecosystem development, figuring out where we sit in our broad pool of partners and other resources that are already out there, and even how we can embed ourselves in traditional economic development structures and use those to our advantage to achieve the means that we're after. So for my day job, I work at a small business development center here in Buffalo, pushing the needle slowly in a direction where we talk about cooperatives and putting people first and social enterprise tactics and those sorts of things at a place that is really, tends to be very capital focused as a day-to-day operation. So I guess we do all of this with the emphasis that ownership really matters. As some folks said earlier, I think in certain communities, ownership is vital. And then we do this in solidarity and collaboration with the organizing movements that are already here, and I think that's super vital to what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I want to leave just by saying I love all the names we come up with for our movements here in Buffalo. So we have to push Buffalo, we have to open Buffalo, and then we have to cooperate as Buffalo to build the thing that we want to see next. So, thanks.
Okay, it's my turn. My name is Rebekah. I work at the Clean Air Coalition of Western New York. We are an environmental justice and public health organization here, and we work to support communities that are sick and ill because of where they work, where they live, how much money they make, or the color of their skin. So I actually never thought I'd be an environmentalist. I still don't know if I am, so don't be mad. I grew up about 30 minutes south of here in a really small town called Colden, New York. I lived up on a hill. There was a lot more snow there than there is in the city. And my mom was a school teacher. So she was the breadwinner of my family. We relied on her income. And she was very, very active in her union. So most of my background is actually around labor and working people, because that's where I grew up and that's how I grew up. I can say honestly that I was raised in the labor movement. My mom eventually went on to be the president, the first president of her local, which is an affiliate of the New York State United Teachers, and we're very proud of her for that. Very proud of her for that. And I think one of the lessons that I've really learned from my mother that has started showing up now, as I find myself in this role in my life, is really around the power of relationships. When my mother was diagnosed, she was diagnosed with, it's called primary CNS lymphoma, about 4 years ago, and I was her primary caretaker, and it's a severe type of lymphoma of the brain. So she actually went from being fiercely independent, to not being able to walk, not being able to speak within 48 hours. So who showed up? The folks that she was in struggle with showed up. And so when we were, seriously, you guys can clap for that. They showed up. So my brother and I were in Roswell, and it was person after person after person after person. Teachers who she fought for their jobs, teachers who she advocated for, teachers who she lobbied for, people who could have lost their job or were having problems at home, but she advocated for them on behalf of the union. Those were the folks that showed up. And I think I've been asked, today to speak a little bit about our just transition work in Tonawanda. We are working with labor to figure out how to succeed, how to prosper, and how to survive after our coal plant in Tonawanda is closing. And I've been asked about, I would say about a dozen times over the last, 9 hours. How long have we been here together? I don't know. I wasn't here yesterday, so. About how do we scale this, right? How do we scale it up? What is the advice? And I don't have it for y'all, right? I don't know if there ever will be one solution that fits every community. I don't know if there ever is going to be, a model that we're supposed to replicate. But what I do know, and what I've been learning and consistently reminded here, is relationships are way more important than the issue. And we've been able to build very, very significant relationships with the folks that work in these plants, people that work in the public sector whose jobs are at risk because of the tax revenue these plants pay. And we've been able to build with them. And we've been able to build wonderful relationships between literally the folks that live across the street from the plant and the folks that represent the guys in the plant. So I think I have 30 seconds left, and that's wonderful because I'm running out of things to say. So I think one of the biggest learnings, and I think one of the things that I'm very proud of, really is that opportunity that I had growing up, and understanding that there needs to be points of joining. And when we're thinking about the type of economy we want to build, we also have to keep in mind that we're in this reality together, and it might not be our fault, right? It might not be our fault that jobs are being lost or we can't make a living, right? But it is our problem. And the only way we're going to overcome that is by establishing actual relationships with each other and showing up. So that's my 2 minutes, 4 minutes. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. Quick show of hands. Who was fortunate enough to jump on the bus to the west side to the Green Development Zone this afternoon? Cool. Thank you very much. So again, I'm Clarke Gocker with Push Buffalo. For those on that tour this afternoon, you probably were introduced to a lot of the affordable housing development projects that Push has taken on since our start about 10 years ago. You maybe viewed a couple of the job training houses that we've also led. And the kind of the snapshot or anecdote I want to share with you all kind of relates to one of those eureka moments that we may all have where kind of in broad daylight or kind of under our noses we say, holy shit, what just happened? We just kind of stumble on something that we think could be transformative. And that happened to us a couple years ago. We had secured funding for a small 5-unit affordable housing development project and said, we're the developers of this project. And it's a role we'd played in a couple prior projects, but it really hadn't dawned on us until that project that as a developer, we could impose standards on ourselves that we would do if we were kind of chasing after other developers in town as a community organizing entity. And so we did just that. We talked to our members and we came up with a set of community benefit standards that we wanted to hold ourselves accountable to as property developers. Chief among those were the creation of living wage, local construction jobs for neighborhood residents and for the sons and daughters of our members. And so how that kind of got operationalized, we used the leverage that we had as a developer, and we knew we were going to be putting this construction project out to bid, so we wrote in the bid documents a requirement to contract with one of our subsidiary organizations to use us as a labor provider for that project. And we said, and it was a modest kind of requirement that we wrote into the bid documents. We said, the winning bidder, you'll contract with our organization for the services of 3 construction laborers. And so the project went out to bid. One of the larger developers in town won the bid. And I remember this vividly. We were sitting down at the construction meeting to kind of kick off the project. And we got to the kind of the point of the project where we said, oh, remember this agreement that was kind of these standards that were put in place in this document. Lo and behold, they hadn't even read that. It was kind of news to them. But at the same time, they also it wasn't shocking. They weren't opposed to it. It was just like, just kind of standard business. And so that was kind of surprising and I think empowering at the same time. And allowed us to create what we now call a community hiring hall, which we see as kind of a transitional institutional form that can really serve as a bridge between the old economy and the new economy. And I think it's powerful at this very moment in time in Buffalo because a lot of the economic development activity within the housing sector is happening in non-unionized segments of that industry, where there aren't good jobs, where developers and general contractors are dependent on temporary labor agencies, contingent labor that as we know, don't look out for their workers' best interests. So we felt like we could fill a gap. We could essentially be a high road temp agency for construction laborers, ensuring that the men and women in our community had priority access to jobs that paid a family-sustaining wage, that provided paid time off benefits, as well as employer-sponsored health care. So last summer at this time, we had 18 men of color employed in positions making $14 to $15 an hour with that package of benefits. And we're kind of at a point now where the model continues. And I think just quickly, with the time I have left, just some lessons learned. There is some tension in that because we are providing a service to developers that are transforming neighborhoods across Buffalo in ways that we don't like, that are leading to the gentrification of certain neighborhoods. So that's a tension that we're wrestling with currently. Another tension is when news broke of what we were doing, that was agitational for our partners and our brothers and sisters in organized labor, in the building trades, but in a good way. It brought us to a table with several building trades unions to have a conversation about pipelines into apprenticeship programs, opportunities to create direct entry with the assistance of the Department of Labor. So those conversations are ongoing. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Clarke. India.
Hello, everyone. My name is India, and I'm going to stand up because the way my nerves are set up, I don't do well sitting still. I just want to congratulate all of you. You lasted this long. I realize I'm probably the last thing in between you and your meal and your beer and your music, so I'm going to try and be brief and try and keep it interesting. So I was born in Buffalo. I was raised in Buffalo on the other side of Main Street, the side with the red line drawn around it, where everything that came into the area went to the other side. So where we saw the west side being developed and North Buffalo being very affluent, we consistently saw in my neighborhood the divestment from our communities, where people couldn't get bank loans to start small businesses, where people couldn't get mortgages, where the city of Buffalo had land that was city owned where the grass would grow waist high because no one was maintaining the land. As an adult, I became a registered nurse, a professional person, and I make a decent amount of money. But when I chose where I was going to live, I wanted to live in my community, among my people, to be an example of what could be done if you put your mind to it. So now I find myself living in the Fruit Belt. If you Google it, they'll tell you that it's the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, but it's not. It's the Fruit Belt. Those people have been in that neighborhood for the last 40 and 50 years. Homeowners, not a neighborhood, but a community, a family of people who have been caring for one another when no one else did. Now we have this giant with anchor institutions like Kaleida Health, a $1 billion healthcare organization that employs more people in Western New York than anybody besides UB, who also happens to be a part of that BNMC problem that we have. So what I've been doing is working with Community First Alliance, which is a coalition of, I'm so sorry, I know I'm a fast talker, I apologize. It's a coalition of community-based organizations and organizers. I'm not an organizer, I'm just a mother. I'm concerned about my community, but we're working with the Partnership for Public Good, with Open Buffalo, with Push Buffalo. What Push has done on the west side, I want to see come into my neighborhood. One of the small well, it's not really a small victory, but the most recent victory we had was we had the state of New York pass legislation that allows us to have a residential parking program in our neighborhood. This is the first time that this has been done in New York State. We're waiting for Governor Cuomo to sign off on it. So anybody here that is a resident of the state, call Andrew. Send him an email, a letter, make a Facebook post, tell somebody call, and you pass this Buffalo parking legislation so that we don't have people who are 75 years old walking 3 blocks home. The Fruit Belt is an old neighborhood. There are not many houses with driveways, and the people are working on the medical campus, coming in from the suburbs, and they're parking in front of our houses. And it's unfortunate that they have to pay, but that's the world that we live in. Most recently, we are asking the city of Buffalo for these 200 plus city-owned lots. They are vacant. Nothing is on them. The land is valuable. That is the only leverage that we have as a community to make sure that developers do not come in, develop the land, and push us out. The median income in my neighborhood is $24,000 a year. A year. My rent is $1,200. No one who lives there can afford that. We need to have 100% community control over these lots so that we can demand that it stays affordable for the people who have been there, for the people who belong there, so that we can maintain some sense of diversity, of history in that community. And this last thing that I want to say, what I need in my community is for people to stop helping us and help us learn, bring us the tools and give us the skills to help ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you, India. Thank you, all the panelists. So technically, we have like 2 minutes left, but in the spirit of the real sharing economy, not the fake Uber sharing economy, we're going to share that with you and your dinner and give it right back to you. So all you need to do is thank the panelists, and then you get to go to dinner.
Hello, hello. Hey, y'all have a very, 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 very important role. So a lot of people obviously have left to go to dinner and take care of themselves. You all need to pass along a few announcements in your conversations over beer and dinner. Can you do that?